Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is John Jake Gaming on for Mike here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the NCAA Dynasty here exclusively on College Football Revamped. We are here in the inaugural season of the series, year number 1, the Sim League. We are closing in on the final few weeks of the regular season, and it has certainly been a fun regular season that has had its fair shares of really exciting football action that we got to experience. However, that being said, we get closer to that fundamental question of answering some very important questions, like who has what it takes to not only go to a bowl game, but also make their way possibly to a national championship here as well in this inaugural season. As usual, we will have several nationally televised games that we will be paying attention to over the course of this episode. But not only will we get to have those certain types of enjoyment, but we will also get the opportunity to check in on multiple top 25 matchups that are happening around the country as well. And since we are closing in towards the end of the regular season, at the end of this episode, we will be taking a look at the conference championship standings to see where teams are as we get into the final couple of weeks of this regular season. So hope you guys are really excited about this opportunity to watch some more NCSL football. Game day going to Auburn, Alabama as well. But with that being said, if you guys are excited, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. I'll catch you guys on the football fields around the country for this week's NCSL action. So with that being said, guys, we will officially get week number 12 action officially underway, and we'll actually start things off in Rock Top, Tennessee, as South Carolina is going to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. And Volunteers have been a disappointing squad this season, starting off as a top 25 team, but they have not really been able to get much of anything done this season. But maybe this studio update could be an omen for possibly a close game that we get to watch to start this episode, as Colorado State took on Utah State in conference play, and the Rams, well, they're actually going to be bowl eligible after this win. But with that being said, we jump into the second quarter of action, and Tennessee's still hanging around, and not only hanging around, but they're actually going to take the lead against South Carolina, as the Volunteers will now take a 14-7 lead. But then we see Davis just trying to throw this insane pass. He had a couple of guys open over on that side of the field, but it was just not thrown hard enough. That's what you get whenever you try to throw across your body. You can't do stuff like that. So South Carolina's still down 14-7, but they will get the football back pretty quickly, and they are just going to go ahead and run it on the ground. Thomas Logan will be getting into the end zone, and we got a tie ball game yet again here at Rocky Top. As we get into the final 3 minutes here of this first half, is I don't know what my man was looking at, but I don't think it was a good read whatsoever. That was too easy of an interception for Brandon Kennedy, as Tim Randrum had all day to throw this ball. I mean, you see the replay for a split second. Who is he trying to throw that ball to? I have no idea. Davis will take advantage as he finds Sam Wallace in the end zone for a touchdown. Although the Gamecocks will miss the extra point though. So it is only a 6-point lead, as Landrum again is going to throw yet another interception in the closing moments of this first half. So Tennessee was up by a score not too long ago, but ever since then, South Carolina, they do rattle off 19 unanswered points to end the half, as both teams struggling to score in the second half. We might have a scoring opportunity here late in this game, as we are here in the fourth quarter now. Tennessee still down by a couple of possessions. Landrum looks over to the left-hand side and finds Louis Perry in the end zone for the touchdown. So it helps Tennessee pull to within 5, but they need some stops on defense. However, this might be the game sealer and it is Thomas Logan with a 28-yard touchdown to end the game. And South Carolina, they will march on and win 35-24 as the Gamecocks win their 7th game of the year. Meanwhile, we got our first double box of the afternoon as we'll see Miami most notably go to work. But before we check that out, we got Indiana taking on Purdue as Purdue in this rivalry game trying to get to a bowl game. They need to win their last couple of games in order to make that happen. But Indiana, they are not have won a single game all year long, but in a decent spot to do so right now, as Indiana has a 21-10 lead, but Jenkins gonna get into the end zone right before halftime. So this could be a very interesting rivalry game here towards the end. We'll see if Purdue can pull it out. They need to pull it out if they want to keep their postseason bowl hopes alive, as we'll see him hand the ball off to Travis Jenkins right up the middle, and he will score, giving Purdue the lead. Now, before we go ahead and finish that game out, we do have a studio update between two teams that have had pleasantly good seasons. Mid-Tennessee State and Western Kentucky, they're both playing pretty close right now. And now we go back to our game with less than 2 minutes left. Purdue hits a field goal that puts them up 27-24. And that does also end up being your final score. So, Purdue does remain alive, at least for right now. But Indiana is still winless. Meanwhile, Coastal Carolina in a similar situation as the Purdue Boilermakers. They need to win out if they want to go bowling, but this will not be an easy game to play by any stretch of the imagination, as they got to go take on the Miami Hurricanes, ranked number 3 in the entire country. But Coastal Carolina, at least early in this game, showing a lot of fight, showing a lot of pride as well. So now we're looking at a 3rd and goal. Coastal Carolina trying to get the first points on the board, and Larry Martin does exactly that. Touchdown, Shanta clears, and Coastal Carolina takes a 7-0 lead. And Jeff Sanders, he's the main offensive weapon for Miami. He's hurt, so a little bit put on the shoulder of Casey Carter. We'll see if Casey Carter can lead Miami to victory. Still a close game that we got, but Casey Carter's going to find his tight end, Antoine Bryant, who's going to do the rest of the work. Now Miami has the lead. Fast forward to 2 minutes left in the first half, though. Trying to set up the screen, and it was read like a novel. Touchdown, Coastal Carolina, and Leon Dunn is going to tie the game for the Chanticleers. And not only will Coastal Carolina tie this game up, they got a chance to possibly take the lead in their final possession of the second quarter, but Larry Martin does throw an unfortunate interception. Miami gets a field goal out of it, but still a pretty good game. Coastal Carolina giving Miami absolutely everything that they can handle right now, but coming out into the second half, you know, if I'm showing special teams, something is about to go down, and sure enough it does. Miami, starting with the kick return, Ray Berry helps Miami extend this lead, as we do get a little bit of a score bug glitch, I guess. At the end of the half, if you start the second half and you get a return for a touchdown, then you get this little scoreboard glitch here where the scores aren't necessarily showing. But that being said, all that you really need to know is that Miami, well, they looked like a premium Miami team, although Coastal Carolina not going down quietly. They do get another interception on Casey Carter. But the Chanticleers, they couldn't really do much of anything with it, though. So now we're going back to the ground game. That's going to be a run for a first down for Andre Downing. We'll see if they go back to him yet again. And it looks like it's going to be a little option play. How about this run right here? That was a big-time run. Coastal Carolina played it well initially, but just failed to bring them down, as Miami, they run away with it in the second half, and they do win big, 41-17 being your final score. With that being said, we got a few more games getting ready to start kicking off, and we'll start with Ohio State going on the... No, not Ohio State, Cincinnati. It's actually going to be Houston taking on the Texas Longhorns. Texas also a former top 25 team that has disappointed to a degree, but that being said, if they can win this game against Houston today, they will be clinching bowl eligibility here in this episode, and with a couple of games left to spare. So not all bad for Texas, as the Texas Longhorns, in spite of a slow start, they go run all over Houston in this game, and Texas does end up beating Houston 48-17. Houston, they definitely got a problem. But now we'll actually go ahead and check out Ohio State, the number 7 ranked team in the nation, taking on the Bearcats of Cincinnati. And Cincinnati at this point in the season, not really playing for very much more than pride at this point in the year. They're 2-7, so they will not be going to a bowl game here in year number 1. So that will be an interesting thing to see there. Gonna be interesting to see how Ohio State handles this game, though. They should blow out the Cincinnati Bearcats. However, Cincinnati has some other things in mind, as we're midway through the second quarter. Cincinnati's still got a lead. They are still leading the Buckeyes here at Nippert Stadium, and the Bearcats also have a chance to make this a 2-score game. Throwing out to the flat, he's got his tight end, and he's gonna be almost into the end zone. I thought he snuck his way in there, but Skylar Brown will be provided a 12-yard gain before they try to close it out with a read option. And read option works to perfection. Cincinnati scoring another touchdown. We're going to add even more. They're already up by 2 scores. This could make it 3 scores, as that Ricky Williams untouched in the end zone. And Ohio State in the college football playoff conversation, they're going to be in some serious trouble now. They really got to kick it up multiple gears if they want to rally back and win this game. Late in the third quarter, Ohio State still searching for their first points of the game, as Earl Johnson Bonnie almost got that first down. They will mark him just short. And it's going to be a 3rd and inches, where Robert Tucker throws quickly over to the left-hand side. And finally, we will see the Buckeyes get on the board, but still down by a couple of possessions. Later on in the fourth quarter, Cincinnati was able to tack on a field goal, so it's back to a 3-possession lead for the Cincinnati Bearcats. We'll see if Cincinnati can hang on and win this game. 2nd and goal now. Tucker in the shotgun. He's going to hand it off to Brian Britt, who finds his way into the end zone. Touchdown, Ohio State. And it's back to a 10-point game. But time becoming critical, as it was in our studio update. Minnesota able to beat Iowa State 38-31. Golden Gophers having a very quiet season, but a very good season nonetheless. As we get to the last moments of this game, Ohio State does score 1 touchdown. But I fear that they might have scored a little bit too late, because there's only 6 seconds left on the clock. Cincinnati will also recover the onside kick, and this massive upset ends up being final. Cincinnati is actually going to shock Ohio State. So that's going to have some massive news around the college football playoff world. We'll see how much of an effect that does end up having. But we will check in on Clemson and Wake Forest going up against each other. And Clemson and Wake Forest, 2 teams I'm excited to see match up against each other. But ended up being a pretty defensive affair overall until we got into that second half of action. Wake Forest looking to try to secure this game in the bag so that they can go bowling for sure. It looks like they will be doing that, but not only will Wake Forest likely end up winning this game, but Ron Washington is actually going to set the school record for most rushing yards in a single season. But before we call that result in, let's check in on Western Kentucky and Mid Tennessee State. The Hilltoppers actually ahead of Mid-Tennessee State by a field goal that has MAC conference implications. But for now, Wake Forest does end up hanging on. They do beat the Clemson Tigers 17-3, and Wake Forest will be going bowling. But now, we got a couple more games getting ready to set the kickoff now. First, we go Utah versus BYU, as two teams are both hovering around 500. BYU here at home, as Utah also another top 25 team that really has not done well. That's been a real common theme here in this season. That a lot of teams that we thought were preseason top 25, for quite a few of these teams that has not been the case. But for both of these teams in particular, their season is not over necessarily. Both got 3 games left to play and still have a shot to going to a bowl game, as Utah will tack this field goal up into the air. It will end up being good. So Utah has a 20-3 lead that they are working through. However, we get into the second half here as we got a nice run up the right-hand side. Breaks a couple of tackles, and Utah is absolutely exploding here in week number 12. BYU is going to be down big, down by 24 points. We'll see if BYU can come with a comeback. They are 5-4, but they did compete pretty well with Penn State back in non-conference action. We'll see if BYU's offense can get in gear, and this throw will help as Will Wilson catches an absolute dot. And the Cougars will go for a 2-point conversion. However, they go with the halfback draw. I don't know why the CPU runs the halfback draw in those kinds of situations. That just does not necessarily work in this game, the halfback draw. At least in NCAA 14, even with college football revamp, it's not necessarily the most effective, but Victor Johnson has been effective. He catches his second touchdown grab of the day. However, that will also come with a 2-point conversion attempt, which doesn't work out very well. Neither is Oregon. Oregon, number 19 in the country after their loss recently. Washington State also giving them everything that they can handle too. But we also get an additional studio update also out on the West Coast, as San Jose State is looking to become bowl eligible. They gotta find a way to beat Colorado, and they're down by a field goal right now. But that being said, Utah will not allow BYU get any closer, so Utah gets back to 500 while BYU exactly the same. But now we go over to Northwestern, taking on the Mountaineers of West Virginia. And both these two teams desperately fighting to keep their seasons alive. Both teams at 3-6 right now, so a loss by either team will knock themselves out of the bowl conversation, as we got an interception here in the red zone, just breaking the Cardinals in. What you gotta do not throw the ball across your body. And what does Reggie Woods do? He throws the ball across his body, and Northwestern takes advantage of it. That's how we get the first points of this game. It's been a very low-scoring affair to start things out for right now. And you want to talk about low scoring, Northwestern even misses the extra point after that pick six, right? So when West Virginia scores on that read option with their quarterback Reggie Woods, well, they're able to turn that around, hit their extra point, because extra points should not be hard to make by any stretch of the imagination, and they now have the lead. But now, less than 2 minutes left to play in the first half, looking to try to finish this first half strong, and West Virginia is putting together a pretty solid drive. We'll see if they can finish this drive pretty well, as Woods drops back facing the blitz, but was picked up really well. Ends up finding Marquise Thompson for the second time on this drive. Now we're inside the 30-yard line, where they go back to Reggie Woods, passing the football, and it's going to find the tight end, Antoine Robinson, before they end up taking their second timeout. So one more timeout left to work with for West Virginia, as they go with a jet sweep for Anthony McCollum. He's going to use that to break a tackle, and now can punch it into the end zone possibly. Reggie looks over the middle. He finds Cedric Minor in the end zone. Touchdown, West Virginia. and the Mountaineers will have a 8-point lead going into the half. And it looks like West Virginia is not looking back, as they're going to be looking to finish this game strong, connecting with Cedric Minor once again, almost for his second touchdown of the afternoon. But instead, it looks like Dan Bishop, he's just going to follow his blocks into the end zone. West Virginia's offensive line manhandling the Wildcat defensive front. And we get yet another studio update. Boise State, they come in ranked number 23 in the entire country. They're taking on the Toledo Rockets, and Boise State's got that early lead. But we also get the final score of West Virginia Northwestern, and the Mountaineers do pull away, winning 27-6 to keep their bowl hopes alive. And now we check in on a couple of big-time games as we get a little later on into this episode. We'll start with the Sunflower State showdown between the Kansas Jayhawks and the Kansas State Wildcats. Kansas State having an excellent season at 7-2, but we haven't really had the opportunity to really check in and, see what they've been up to, as Toledo's trying to pull the upset on Boise State. But Kansas State, man, they have been rolling quietly, not getting a lot of love from the national media. One of the few times that they will have Kansas State on national television this season. It looks like they're making the most of that opportunity, as Kansas State got 24-7 lead, but Chase Joseph, he's going to try to throw a dot over the middle and finds Eric Clark. Jayhawks cut to just 12. Meanwhile, while we're at the halftime locker room, we get another studio update on another game that is closing in on the half, and it's again that Toledo and Boise State game, all not up at 13. The Broncos, they very well might be on upset alert. As we check in back in our game, still a relatively close game, what we expect from these rivalry game affairs, but looks like Kansas State might be ready to take control here late in the third quarter, as Tim Brewster's reception does get him inside the 5-yard line, and they will hand the ball off as Kansas State creates massive holes for Kevin Robinson, who finds the end zone for yet another touchdown. 31-14 now your score, and it looks like Kevin Robinson, he's just out there running absolutely wild now, really giving Kansas the business and really sending a message to the national media talking about, hey, y'all need to rank us. We're about to be 8-2, especially after we throw that dime to Kevin James. So it's safe to say Kansas State gonna be 8-2 on this season. You gotta rank the Kansas State Wildcats. They've been playing good football. It's time they receive some attention. But speaking of that top 25 ranking, we do get a top 25 matchup out in the northeastern part of the country. We got the Penn State Nittany Lions, and Penn State's coming in. They're ranked number 17 in the entire country. They're going to be taking on the Army Black Knights, who are coming in ranked number 20 in the entire country. And it's going to be a critical conference battle between these two squads. And defense is going to matter early, and it's going to matter often, as look at this. Blake Robinson makes the quarterback miss, and Penn State, they're going to take the lead off of a pick six of all things. And it looks like Penn State is just ready to rumble. They came to play, bringing that intensity required to win at the West Point Academy, because in NCAA 14, those military academies, well, they tend to be pretty darn good, particularly Army and Navy. Not necessarily as much for Air Force necessarily, but that being said, playing some good ball, Army is nonetheless. But they look like they are running into a buzzsaw in the Penn State Nittany Lions, as they'll quickly jump to a 21-0 lead at the halftime break. And the Nittany Lions just never look back after that. Good win on the road, taking down a top 25 opponent, as Penn State gets to 7-3, while Army, they're going to lose their fourth game of the season. But we will have yet another top 25 matchup officially underway. The Georgia Bulldogs, ranked number 13 in the nation, they will be taking on the number 22 ranked Auburn Tigers. And this will be a big battle for both teams, where defense tends to reign, as we check out the season offensive ranks for both teams. And it's going to be interesting to see if Auburn can lean on that passing offense, because they certainly won't be able to run the ball on Georgia necessarily, as we'll go ahead and see Georgia trying to throw this football deep, and that is a dime to Dan Jones. A 38-yard reception on the first drive of the game, and eventually we'll find Lamar Owens in the back of the end zone. And that was really all the points that we really saw necessarily in this game, at least in the first half, because we'll see him trying to throw over the middle yet again, and Georgia had the numbers on the Hail Mary, just threw it directly to the Auburn guy, unfortunately. So Georgia does at least take a lead into the halftime locker room after that Hail Mary interception, but this is one of those games where Auburn just has a really tough time getting anything going. You know, if you hold your opponent to 7 points, you should be winning this game, especially late in the game as it is right now. It's just been an ugly game to watch as Perry Britton gets yet another interception. And that's really what's the story of the day. The Georgia defense standing tall. They will beat the Auburn Tigers 7-3. It'll be interesting to see if Auburn remains in the top 25 or not, though. But now we're closing in on just a few more games left in this episode, and there's a lot of good football being played, even late in the day. We'll start with North Carolina, who is also another team like Kansas State, who should be ranked, although North Carolina actually was ranked in the top 25 after a little bit of work. They did end up being kept out after they lost their second game of the season, but, you know, they're still playing some really good football, and I think they really are, they're much better than what their national ranking says. I think North Carolina has been a little disrespected, as Brian Reese will get the opening salvos going. He's just going to run it into the end zone all by himself. But we will get a studio update on Colorado, who's going to ruin San Jose's postseason plans as Colorado wins by 20. But we also get yet another studio update to start the next quarter. The scores just continue to roll in as Boise State beats the Toledo Rockets 27-22. Boise State wins their 8th game of the season. So here we are in the second quarter of action. North Carolina trying to pull away even more. Reese dropping back, tries to throw over the middle, but did not see that safety in the back of the end zone. And that's going to be a costly mistake. Allows Virginia to get a field goal. So it's a one-possession game before we see him throw yet another interception. North Carolina really should be taking care of Virginia right now, but that just hasn't happened yet. That's primarily because of 3 turnovers in the first half. It's really hard to win a football in that kind of way. So Virginia is still in the football game because of that. They're not winning, but they are still in this game. North Carolina, however, trying to pull away here in the last minute of the third quarter. Reese, he's going to run the ball up the middle, and he's going to be stuffed eventually, but not before getting inside the 3-yard line. Nice little run there by Brian Reese, as he does have a rushing touchdown earlier, but it's going to be the fullback of all people, Aaron Ellis. He's going to run it into the end zone, and I'm sure somewhere out there, not the expert, is going to be shining, and we get another studio update in this football game. We got New Mexico and Arizona State. The Lobos will have a field goal lead. But even though North Carolina didn't necessarily play its best game today, North Carolina will still end up winning the game, beating Virginia. But speaking of teams that might not playing at its highest level, USC taking on Stanford. They actually had a bunch of field goals initially. So USC, you know, they may have already scored 26 points at this point in the game, but this and another longer touchdown will be the only touchdowns that they really scored in this game. So while Stanford looks like on paper they got absolutely annihilated, this was actually quite a bit closer of a game than what I thought it was going to be honest with you guys. As for Florida State, they go down to Tampa, Florida. Same stadium where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play their professional football. Used to be the home of Tom Brady, but he has now retired, and they're now going to have to watch Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask to play quarterback back there, which might resort them to check out the South Florida team a little bit more, depending on how those two quarterbacks end up doing over the course of this season. But South Florida, they could go out and they could possibly be a bowl eligible team after this game if they can hang on and beat Florida State, but the Seminoles are not going to make it any easier, as we will see them run it into the end zone here. So it's just a one possession game at this point. 17-23 going to be your score, as Lewis Barrett, he is just refusing to go down. Reminds me of how J.D. Barrett used to run back in his Ohio State days. And the Seminoles look for their first lead of the game. Are they going to get it here in this back half of the fourth quarter? Barrett trying to make that happen, as we got 3rd and goal now. Key stop needed for the Bulls, and it's gonna not happen. Nick Warren's going to score with 4:42 left to play. South Florida cannot respond, so at this point, the Bulls are just trying to get the football back, and Nick Warren's going to be ran out of bounds. That actually might not be the worst thing, because it does help stop the clock in those types of situations, and they will score yet again, but they just go for the extra point. So South Florida had a chance to win this game. Unfortunately, they did end up blowing it, and the Bulls will have to try later in order to get bowl eligible. But we go and see the Washington Huskies. Washington ranked number 5 in the entire country. Get a chance to watch them a little bit, as it feels like the West Coast is not as well covered as the East Coast teams is. But Washington and then Oregon State as well. The Beavers coming in 5-4. So this is a pretty good football team too. We'll see if they have enough juice to take down the Washington Huskies. But looks like they do, at the very minimum, have the juice early to take a lead on this Washington squad. And Oregon State actually gets off to a very hot start as well, already up 14-3 before we get into decision time. Curtis Mendoza does not get the first down off the wide receiver screen, but the Beavers are going for it, and the Beavers stick together because Ken Fellows makes the catch. He'll pick up the first down for Oregon State. Here comes the Beavers yet again. 3rd and goal. Trying to throw one towards the end zone. And all of that just to throw an interception. Man, that's tough. Now it's Washington's time to drive down the length of the field, as it looks like it's going to be a run for Joe McDaniel, who cuts it to just a 4-point game. But we get a studio update on the Navy midshipmen, who are ranked number 24 in the country. They'll also hang on and beat James Madison. So here we are in the second half. Washington still has a narrow lead, could still go in either direction, but it looks like Washington is ready to really show the talent on the depth chart, as Joe McDaniel's going to line up in the shotgun formation, hands it off to John Moore, untouched, in his way into the end zone. That's a touchdown for the Washington Cougars, who do make it a 2-possession game. And Joe McDaniel wants to make that lead even bigger, as I thought he fell into the end zone, but he will be marked down at about the 1-yard line before McDaniels finishes the job himself, talking about, I did all this work to get us down here. I'm going to make sure that we get points on the board here too. And they're also going to go for the 2-point conversion. I'm surprised that they're doing this now, but it actually, it almost works. I thought they were actually going to punch it into the end zone there, but the running back fumbles the ball on the 1-yard line. Not sure who recovers it. Not that it necessarily matters, because 2-point conversion is going to fail anyways. So it's still a 2-possession game, a 15-point deficit that Oregon State is going to have to try and overcome. However, that being said, Washington is just primed to get more points on the board. They go back to John Moore, who gets initially stuffed, but he's able to break that tackle, scores yet again, and it's 36-14 in favor of the number 5 team in the nation. Really showing why they are also in that discussion to get into the initial NCSL college football playoff here towards the end of season number 1. But Oregon State, they won't go down quietly. Not in front of these home fans. They're going to fight to the bitter end. And you want to show how much they care? They're going to go for it here, looking for this 2-point conversion. And the 2-point conversion is actually going to be successful. So we could be talking about a game that could get a tad bit interesting. But Washington does end up winning 36-22. They're going to be 9-1 at this point in the season. And they're a legit team to watch. So we only had one more game left in this episode, and it's going to be Mississippi State taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide. And this Mississippi State squad, it is led, they have an FCS transfer actually. That is the Sanford transfer in Mark Barbado that takes snaps for the Mississippi State offense as he tries to lead them down the field. Hands it off to Micah Franklin in order to cap off a touchdown drive. And the Bulldogs will have an early 7-3 lead. Later on in the game, though, Mark Barbado being asked to try to make a big play downfield and finds Isaac Rogers in order to convert on 4th down. This Alabama team is certainly don't got the teeth like it used to have, as Lance Jenkins was just all by himself, wide butt naked open, and Mark Barbado is going to have a passing touchdown. As it looks like Mississippi State, they're just having their own way against Alabama. It's absolutely incredible not only to see Alabama losing, but Alabama currently being torn apart. Like, if this happened in real life, Twitter, always college football Twitter, would be absolutely going insane right now. It's crazy to see this score unfold as Barbado gonna throw again over to the left-hand side, and he finds Lance Jenkins. So we're gonna take a break from that particular slaughter fest. We're gonna check in on some games around the country real fast. New Mexico actually does beat Arizona State 27-24. It keeps their bowl hopes alive, while Arizona State still has 2 more opportunities to get to a bowl game. But more notably, Rutgers and Syracuse had an absolute shutout, and Jacob Butler, he threw 7 touchdown passes in the game in order to make sure that his team remains undefeated. They will remain at number 2 in the country for now. But it looks like Mississippi State will complete their blowout of the Alabama Crimson Tide. The Bulldogs win by 30+. What was a shocker? Alright boys, so now that we have all of the major gameplay out of the way here in week 12, let's take a moment here to take a look at some other notable scores around the country. And if you're a custom coach in this series, you're going to want to look away for a second, as Wyoming, they do have an offensive coordinator at Wyoming, and he's having a rough first season. His team loses to Nevada 49-6, and the Wolfpack, in spite of their slow start to the season, they might bank themselves into bowl eligibility depending on what they do in terms of their regular season finale. And then defensive coordinator Willie McNair, his team played up against Eastern Carolina, and the Pirates not only beating Duke, but blowing out the Blue Devils 44-14, an embarrassing loss for Duke as they're down just 2-8 and really struggling in particular in conference play. As for the Pittsburgh Panthers, they're able to get to 8-2. They're having a strong season. They beat Texas State 28-9 as the Panthers continue their strong inaugural season in the NCSL. As for the Michigan Wolverines, they will remain undefeated on the season as they take down the Ball State Cardinals 42-0. Wolverines putting themselves in a fantastic spot to get into the college football playoff here in year number 1. However, for Virginia Tech, they go on the road against Appalachian State, and Virginia Tech does achieve bowl eligibility in a big way. They win 56-14 in what was an absolute barn burner for the Hokies. Meanwhile, for UCLA, they will now be 11-0 on the season as they beat the Fresno State Bulldogs 24-14, and it helps to retain their #1 spot in the nation as of right now. Speaking of top 25 teams, Nebraska was also in action. They took on the UTEP Miners, and Nebraska does win 28-19. Because of this win, they are able to get to 10-1, a double-digit win season absolutely secured. As for the Baylor Bears, they're able to get themselves into that possibility of being a double-digit win team, as Baylor is now 8-2 as well after a 34-24 victory over the Rice Owls in conference play. Speaking of big dubs, Michigan State is able to secure one against Miami of Ohio as the Spartans win 42-7, keeping themselves in contention to possibly go to the conference championship this upcoming as we get ready to get closer to postseason action. That being said, Washington State, they did have Oregon on the ropes for a while, but in the fourth quarter, Oregon was able to surge, outscoring the Washington State Cougars 14-3, and Oregon was able to escape with a victory, retaining their spot within the top 25. Speaking of top 25 teams, Texas A&M, they were in a barn burner against the University of Texas San Antonio, but the Roadrunners just did not have that extra gear in them. While they put up a valiant effort, they do fall to the number 10 ranked team in the nation, 52-31. But we do also have another upset that happens outside of gameplay. Arkansas State was ranked in the top 25 for a moment, but after their loss to Louisiana Tech, that is no longer the case. Red Wolves are still bowl eligible, while Louisiana Tech's bowl dreams, they still remain alive as they're 4-6 on the season. As for the Oklahoma Sooners, it took them a while to get back to this point as they started with a terrible loss to Bowling Green, but now Oklahoma's officially back in the top 25, doing so by beating the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes 41-20. They're 8-2 and in a good spot to make it into the conference championship. So with just a couple of weeks left in the entire regular season, let's go take a look around the NCSL, checking on those conference championship races. We'll start in the ACC, or as I like to call it, the Carolinas Conference. And in the Carolinas division in the ACC, it's very close. South Carolina does have the advantage right now. They're at 5-1 in conference play, but all of these other teams are still in it. Lake Forest, Charlotte, Virginia Tech, the Mountaineers of Appalachian State, and Clemson, well, they're all just within 2 games of South Carolina, so anyone could still win this division. Everyone but Appalachian State is bowl eligible. Meanwhile, in the Commonwealth Division, we will be looking at North Carolina possibly locking things up next week, as North Carolina has a 2-game lead over the likes of Old Dominion, who are the only other team that's left that still has a chance to chase down the North Carolina Tar Heels. Meanwhile, jumping over to the American Conference, this is the Frontier Division. In Nebraska, they are definitely in control right now. They do have a 7-0 conference record, but that being said, one conference game left to play. It's going to be interesting to see what Kansas State does. They're right on their tail. They're not ranked in the top 25, but 8-2 on the season. They are definitely a team that should get top 25 consideration. They're a legitimate football team who has a chance to sneak into the conference championship. As for the Lake Division, the Lake Division is honestly pretty not stellar by any means. Right now, it is a 2-way tie between Wisconsin and Iowa, and I think they're both done with their conference games. But I am curious to see what Eastern Michigan, Central, and Western Michigan can do in their final couple of games. They could make things interesting as we're getting to the final stretch. But now we jump over to the Big 12 Conference, which features teams from Texas and Oklahoma. And right now, it does seem like Texas A&M, they are controlling their own destiny right now, as Baylor is in second place, but Baylor did lose to Texas A&M earlier in the season. And they do have one more conference game as well. That is against UTEP. Winning that conference game will put them in for sure. But again, if Texas A&M loses next week, it does open the door for Baylor to possibly get in, as they got 2 conference games left. And now we have the Lone Star division in the Big 12 Conference, and it looks like Oklahoma very well could run with it. If they win one more conference game, they are guaranteed in. The only team that could keep up with them possibly is TCU, who has done solid in conference play, but they need to win their next 2 if they want to be bowl eligible. But now we move into the Big 10 Conference, and more specifically, that Buckeye division. And that loss that they took to Cincinnati made this division a lot more interesting. 2 more conference games for the Buckeyes. They have a 1-game lead. Their next 2 games is going to be Akron, and we also got Michigan towards the end. So there's a lot of opportunity for Kent State, an Akron, or Cincinnati to possibly sneak in and make this conference championship game. Ohio and Toledo, they're not completely out of it either. However, in the Hoosier division, it does seem like a done deal possibly, as Michigan's been playing some great football all season. They've been one of the most consistent teams that we have seen in the NCSL all season long. Michigan State, however, they're 5-1 in the division. They have a chance to possibly sneak in. And then also Miami only has a couple of losses. So if Michigan does collapse, could also see them possibly represent this Hoosier division as well. But now we go over to Conference USA as we check in on the Colonial division now. Navy currently has the lead, ranked number 21 in the nation. They do have a 5-1 conference record, but keep an eye out for Temple. Temple is just a game behind. They actually play Navy next week, so we'll have to see how they do. That could determine who goes to the conference championship game. James Madison could also be in that picture as well. 5-5 with a 4-3 conference record. They do need a little bit of help, but they're certainly not completely out of it as well, since Navy does, and also Temple, they both have a couple more conference games too. As for the Union division, we got the Syracuse Orange, who only have one more conference game that they do need to play. Syracuse right now, if they win, they are going to be in automatically. Pittsburgh right there, though, trying to give chase in the Union division. Quick look in the Independents just to see how things are going there. The Warhawks have secured bowl eligibility at 7-4. San Jose State will fall just short. They finished 5-7. But now we go over to the MAC Conference, and a little bit of a surprise here with 2 conference games left. Western Kentucky, a 1-star program. They are leading this division right now, and a division that I thought Virginia was going to be the shoo-in because they were the top program in this division. But hey, don't count out Mid-Tennessee State. They did lose to Western Kentucky recently, but they can still sneak in with a couple of games. Don't count out Vanderbilt either. 4-2 in conference play. They could mess around and get into this conference championship as well. They do also need to win their next couple of games if they want to go bowling. However, in the Great Lakes division, it does seem pretty set to see Notre Dame possibly get in if they win in their final conference game. The only team that could chase them down is West Virginia. They did beat Notre Dame, I do believe, but West Virginia needs a little bit of help. They need Notre Dame to lose in their final game. But now we go over to the Mountain West Conference, and this is the Desert Division, how things are shaking out right now. We got 2 more conference games for the Colorado Buffaloes. They currently hold the lead, but UNLV trying to give chase as well. They do need some help in order to get in. Arizona State also has a shot to get into this conference championship game as well. They do need to win at least one of their next 2 games in order to make a bowl game happen. Now, as for the Mountain Division, also a pretty tight race as of right now with 2 conference games remaining. Boise State in the top 25, ranked number 20 in the country. They're 5-1 right now in the conference. Colorado State is not too far behind. They're 6-4 with a 4-2 conference record. Also keep an eye on for the likes of Utah and BYU, who can also come in and mix things up as well. Now, moving on to the Pac-12 conference, and it looks like it's pretty much going to be a shoo-in for Washington to get in. They're undefeated in conference play. If they win their next game, they're automatically going to be in. If they win either of their next 2 games, they'll automatically be in. Oregon could sneak in. They do play Washington in the next episode. It is a must-win if Oregon wants to have any opportunity to go to the conference championship. However, in the specific division, it is just a 2-team race, and these 2 teams will play each other in Week 14. UCLA, ranked number 1 in the entire country, they will take on the number 6 ranked USC Trojans, and it will be a battle to determine who represents the Pacific Division in the Pac-12 championship game. It is going to be a game that ain't nobody going to forget anytime soon. I'm really excited for that matchup towards the end of the season. Now we move down to the southeast part of the country and we go to the Peach Division, mainly made up of teams from the state of Georgia. Georgia and Georgia Tech are tied. They are both 5-1 in this conference at the moment, with a Georgia Southern trying to give chase at the moment. They are 4-2 in conference play. UAB, they're not completely out of it either with 2 games left. They do need to win their next couple of games if they want to go to a conference championship game, and that also applies if they want to go to a bowl game here in year number 1. However, in the Sunshine Division, it looks like it is going to be Miami that will be representing the Sunshine Division in the SEC Championship. Nobody else can even come close. They are undefeated, and no one has any more room or any possibility of making up any ground. For the final division conference, we have the Sun Belt Conference, and we go over to the Bayou Division, made up of some teams mainly from Arkansas and Louisiana. LSU has the lead at the moment. They have the tiebreaker over Arkansas. LSU did beat Arkansas earlier in the season, but a couple of other teams could certainly make things interesting here, as they still have 2 conference games apiece. Tulane can certainly mix things up, and the same could be said for Louisiana Tech, who just took down Arkansas State. The Red Wolves of Arkansas State, they have a 3-4 conference record. They'll need some major help if they want to get to the conference championship, and if they want to be a top 25 team. They recently fell out because of a loss to Louisiana Tech. In the final division that we got going on is the Rebels of Ole Miss. In Ole Miss, they control their own destiny right now with 2 conference games remaining, undefeated in the conference right now, and the only thing that might stop them is an Egg Bowl rivalry game against Mississippi State. They're 5-2. Obviously, Mississippi State needs to win in order to make next week relevant. They gotta take down Arkansas. That won't be an easy task, but if Mississippi State wins that game, it sets them up against Ole Miss, possibly in order to make that Egg Bowl really relevant. They do also need some help from the Rebels. They have to lose next week. Otherwise, Ole Miss will be going to the Sun Belt Conference Championship representing the Dixie Division. So that will wrap things up here in this episode of the NCSL Dynasty. We only have a couple more weeks left in the regular season, in this inaugural season of the NCSL. The matchups are heating up. Every game means just a little bit more. Who do you guys think are going to conference championship games? And when that 8-team college football playoff initially starts for the NCSL, who could you see being those 8 teams? Let me know down in the comment section below. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed today's content, I need you guys to go ahead and do a big favor for me. Smack that like button and hit that subscribe button as well. If you do have to be brand new to the channel, this is John J Gaming on the mic signing off. Hope you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.